It's the summer of 1980. This hard rock band drops a record that goes on to sell over 50 million copies globally.
Which is just an absolutely massive number.
Right. It is certified 27 times platinum in the United States alone. And to this day, it stands as the second best-selling album in human history, sitting right behind Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Yeah, it's a staggering level of commercial dominance. I mean, it completely reshaped the entertainment industry.
Totally. But here is where the data gets incredibly surprising, especially if you think you know the story. Despite that monumental, earth-shattering success, that album, Back in Black by AC/DC, only ever peaked at number 4 on the Billboard 200 during its initial release.
Yeah, number 4.
Number 4. I mean, how does the second biggest album in human history not even hit number 1 when it comes out?
Well, the answer really comes down to how the album actually functioned in the market. Back in Black was like the ultimate word-of-mouth long-tail seller.
Ah, okay. So it didn't rely on a big opening week.
Exactly. It didn't have that front-loaded, hyped-up debut. Instead, it just slowly became the pristine reference standard for hard rock over years. And because of that, that slow-burn, multi-generational satisfaction, the public treated their follow-up album, For Those About to Rock, as an automatic blind purchase.
Oh, so they just bought it without even hearing it.
Right. And that follow-up shot instantly to number 1. What this really proves is that chart peaks are often just a lagging indicator of a previous album's brilliance, rather than a reflection of the current album's quality.
That makes so much sense. Welcome to Deep Cuts and Deep Thinking, everybody. In today's deep dive, we're unpacking a massive stack of sources to reveal how AC/DC, a band that honestly was constantly dismissed by critics as simple or crude, actually engineered one of the most sophisticated sonic architectures and corporate strategies in music history.
Yeah, we really need to rethink how we categorize this band. If you look at the economics of AC/DC and then trace that down to how they physically constructed their music, they were operating with a level of strategic discipline that, frankly, most Fortune 500 companies would envy.
Oh, absolutely. And let's unpack this corporate strategy first, because I have this analogy I've been thinking about for you.
Okay, let's hear it.
So if you look at how AC/DC operates, they are essentially a literal utility company for your ears. You don't want your water company to experiment.
Right.
You don't want them getting creative with the plumbing.
No, definitely not.
You want standardized, reliable, unchanging quality. You flip the switch, lights come on every single time. AC/DC basically eliminated commercial risk by giving you exactly what you paid for.
I love that. That framework is perfect for understanding their brand. Because in the realm of marketing science, specifically referencing Professor Byron Sharp's work on how brands grow, long-term equity isn't built by constant reinvention. Yeah. It is actually built by the ruthless preservation of distinctive brand assets. Think about their visual and sonic trademarks. You have the Gothic lightning bolt logo, which was designed by Gerard Huerta in 1977.
Oh, the iconic logo.
Exactly. And you have Angus Young's unchanging schoolboy uniform. And musically, there's this strict adherence to dry, open chord guitar riffs. I mean, they never diluted their product with synthesizers or trendy collaborations.
Never. And that unrelenting consistency bred a kind of fan loyalty that creates massive market ripples, which connects directly to that lagging indicator concept you mentioned earlier. There's an actual term for this phenomenon now, isn't there?
Yeah, chart analyst Chris Malamphy actually coined it the AC/DC rule. It describes a behavioral pattern in entertainment consumerism where a massive opening week is actually a reward for the prior release. And we see this everywhere once you know to look for it.
Like where else?
Bon Jovi's New Jersey debuted with massive momentum thanks to Slippery When Wet. You even see it in video games. Like Capcom's Resident Evil 5 had massive initial sales primarily because of the groundbreaking quality of Resident Evil 4.
Okay, so you deliver an undeniable product and you guarantee your next payday. That is brilliant. But they also protected their catalog with an iron fist. They had this incredible anti-streaming artificial scarcity strategy.
Oh yeah, they were notoriously protective.
They completely refused to put their music on Apple's iTunes until 2012.
Which is so late in the game.
Right. They wouldn't let you buy a song for 99 cents because they insisted the album was a cohesive unit. If you wanted it, you had to buy the whole physical record, or eventually digital boxes like the collection for $99.99. They even held off on Spotify until 2015.
And by maintaining that scarcity, they protected the high-margin physical sales of their catalog for as long as humanly possible.
Yeah.
When they finally did enter the digital streaming market, they did so with their value completely intact. So smart. But okay, if AC/DC is this perfectly reliable utility company generating all this power, I want to look at the machinery itself, like the actual guitars. When you dig into the gear archaeology of the Young brothers, it is insanely specific.
Oh, it really is. We are looking at a meticulous division of labor here. Let's start with Malcolm Young on rhythm guitar.
Okay.
His philosophy was based on what musicologists call the holes in the riff. He didn't just play a wall of continuous distortion, He utilized silence.
How so?
Well, by muting the strings between chord strikes, he created a sudden vacuum of sound. And that actually makes the human brain perceive the next chord as significantly heavier.
Oh, that's fascinating.
But to get that massive woody tone, he used really punishing gear. We were talking about pure and nickel strings, custom gauged from 0.012 to 0.058.
Wait, hold on. For anyone who hasn't tried to play a guitar with strings that thick, a 0.058 low E string is literally like playing a suspension bridge cable.
Yeah, it's brutal. It requires immense, agonizing wrist strength just to strike it cleanly. Why would he deliberately make his instrument so physically painful to play?
He needed that high mechanical tension to prevent pitch deflection.
Pitch deflection.
Right, so when you strike a lighter guitar string with extreme physical force, the string actually stretches for a fraction of a second, which causes the note to go sharp before settling into the correct pitch.
Oh, I see.
So by using bridge cable strings, Malcolm could hit the guitar with maximum aggression, and the pitch would remain perfectly stable, giving him a highly focused, almost piano-like low end.
That makes total sense. And his main guitar, which he called the Beast, was a 1963 Gretsch Jet Firebird that he completely stripped down. I mean, he literally ripped out the neck and middle pickups, leaving these gaping routing cavities in the mahogany body. Again, why intentionally damage the instrument like that?
Because taking those pickups out effectively turned the solid body guitar into a semi-hollow body. Yeah, those empty cavities acted as acoustic sound holes, which increased the natural woody resonance of the instrument before the electronic signal even hit the amplifier.
Wow.
And the one pickup he left in there was a stock Filtertron with a super low DC resistance, measuring around 5.1 kilo ohms to 5.12 kilo ohms.
Wait, but most heavy metal bands want high output pickups for maximum distortion, right? Why use a low output pickup?
Well, a high output pickup pushes so much signal that the amplifier compresses the sound, turning complex chords into just a wall of mush. A low output pickup preserves the dynamic range and the high-end clarity.
Okay, I get it.
It allowed Malcolm to drive the Marshall amplifiers into a natural saturation while keeping every single note in a complex open chord perfectly defined.
So Malcolm is all about acoustic purity, heavy strings, and stripping away technology. But then we have Angus on lead guitar playing fluid, elastic Chicago blues phrasing.
Right, totally different approach.
He used much lighter strings, Ernie Ball super slinkies, ranging from 0.009 to 0.042 on a 1970 Gibson SG, which allowed for those wide vibratos. But wait, hold on.
What's up?
You just said Malcolm's entire philosophy was stripping away technology to get a pure, unadulterated tone. So why in the world is Angus doing the exact opposite by plugging his guitar into a clunky wireless radio transmitter? Doesn't that completely contradict their pure aesthetic?
It totally sounds like a contradiction on the surface.
Yeah.
But Angus started using the Schaffer-Vega diversity system, or SVDS, because he was notorious for running wildly around the stage.
Right, his famous stage antics.
Exactly. And standard guitar cables kept tangling or dropping out, so Ken Schaffer designed the SVDS simply as a VHF wireless stage transmitter. It was never meant to be a tone-shaping pedal at all.
So how did a stage utility become the secret ingredient to the most famous hard rock lead tone in history?
Well, the SVDS belt pack fundamentally altered the physical waveform of the guitar signal. It compressed the audio signal at a 2-to-1 ratio and boosted it before transmitting it through the air.
Okay.
Then the receiver tower on top of his amplifier expanded it back. This is a process known in audio engineering as companding.
Companding, got it.
Yeah, and beyond that, the receiver had a solid-state boost control that added over 30 decibels of clean gain.
Wow. Meaning it hit the amplifier way harder than a guitar cable ever could.
Much harder. And this introduced a rich, mid-range harmonic coloration that pushed the front end of Angus's Marshall amplifiers into this thick, singing saturation.
That is so cool.
It smoothed out the harsh, spiky transients of his lighter strings and gave the lead lines a vocal, sustaining quality. It was actually so critical that during the Back in Black studio overdubs, the engineering team realized they couldn't even match Angus's guitar tones if the SVDS unit was turned off.
No way.
Yeah, it was the absolute linchpin of his sound.
That is incredible. But, you know, all of that heavy lifting on the guitars would completely fall flat without the foundation beneath it. The rhythm section of AC/DC is really defined by absolute metronomic minimalism. Phil Rudd on drums and Cliff Williams on bass guitar.
Oh, completely. Phil Rudd basically rejected all the virtuoso showmanship of the 1970s.
No 10-minute drum solos.
None. No elaborate solos, no rapid double bass drumming. He played a strict 4 on the floor beat. The snare drum landed strictly on beats 2 and 4, while the kick drum locked perfectly to the down beats.
And Cliff Williams.
Cliff Williams on bass guitar mirrored this perfectly. He played totally unadorned eighth note or quarter note root note lines, locking his note lengths precisely to the kick drum.
So they essentially built this massive sonic concrete slab for the guitars to stand on.
Exactly.
And it wasn't just the playing, right? It was how they architected the songs. They had this rigid, almost classical sonata-like 4-step blueprint form that they applied to almost every hit.
Oh yes, it's so structured.
Like step 1 is the isolated riff intro. You hear this in Highway to Hell or Thunderstruck, just the dry guitar establishing the exact groove. Then step 2 is the full band pocket drop, where the kick, snare, and bass crash in simultaneously.
Yep.
Step 3 is the syncopated pre-chorus escalation, building the tension. And finally, step 4 is the explosive unison chorus.
And that blueprint is just devastatingly effective from a psychological standpoint.
But if the structure is that mathematically predictable, and the drumming is that simple, why doesn't it just sound like a boring, lifeless drum machine to you?
That is a great question. The magic lies entirely in microtiming.
Microtiming.
Yeah, because the arrangement is so sparse, there's absolutely nowhere to hide. If Phil Rudd drags the beat by a fraction of a millisecond, the tension of the groove is completely ruined.
Wow.
The human brain actually craves the resolution of a perfectly timed downbeat. When a drummer locks into the pocket that tightly without rushing the tempo at all, it triggers a continuous release of dopamine for the listener.
That's amazing.
It requires an extraordinary level of dynamic control and mechanical unity between the players.
And this was captured flawlessly during their era working with producer Mutt Lange, right? Starting in 1979 with Highway to Hell. I know Lange was obsessively precise. He tracked the instruments dry in extremely dead, non-reflective studio rooms to eliminate any messy phase issues.
He did, but if you leave the recording that dry, it sounds really claustrophobic.
So how do they fix that?
To solve this, Lange's engineering collaborator Tony Platt used a technique called spatial reamping.
Okay, how does that actually work? Can you give me a metaphor for what spatial reamping is actually doing to the sound?
Sure. So imagine recording a person shouting inside a perfectly padded, soundproof closet.
Okay, got it.
The recording is incredibly clear and aggressive, but it feels tiny. Now imagine taking a speaker, placing it inside a massive, empty stone cathedral, and playing that closet, recording through the speaker while recording the echo in the room.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. By blending that new reverberant room recording back in with the dry closet recording, you get the immense cavernous size of the cathedral, but you still maintain the aggressive, crystal clear punch of the close-up shout.
That is brilliant. It created massive physical space without muddying the direct attacks of the guitars.
Exactly.
Add in Lange's signature football crowd unison backing vocals, where they'd have Malcolm, Cliff, and even the studio staff gathering around a microphone shouting the hooks and layering it dozens of times. You literally have a sound that feels like a soccer stadium chanting at you.
It's a huge sound.
But if Mutt Lange built this massive stadium-sized instrumental wall of sound, that creates a physical acoustic problem. How do you find a single human voice capable of actually cutting through that dense wall without getting totally drowned out?
Well, the history of AC/DC is uniquely bisected by how they solved exactly that problem with two distinctly different frontmen. Bon Scott was the original voice that defined them. And he wasn't, a dark, brooding, heavy metal singer. He was a blue-collar street poet with a brilliant mastery of cheeky double entendres and self-deprecating humor.
Well, definitely. Songs like Big Balls, where he satirizes high society through really crude innuendo, or Down Payment Blues, which is this gritty, deeply humorous portrait of working-class financial struggle. Vocally, he had this piercing, nasal, grit-infused blues shout that sat perfectly above Malcolm's low mid-range guitar frequencies.
But then tragedy strikes. On February 19th, 1980, Bon Scott dies of acute alcohol poisoning at just 33 years old.
Which is just so incredibly sad. And usually, that is an immediate career-ending event for a rock band on the verge of global stardom.
It presented a profound crisis for them, but instead of hiring a Bon Scott impersonator, which would have just invited endless unfavorable comparisons, they auditioned Brian Johnson.
Right.
And Johnson brought a totally different vocal engine to the band. He utilized a technique called intense vocal fold compression.
What does that mean physically? Like, how is he doing that with his throat?
Think of it like pinching the end of a garden hose.
Okay.
If you let the water flow normally, it's a wide, gentle stream. But if you restrict the opening, the water pressure builds up incredibly high.
And it shoots out as a focused, piercing jet.
Exactly. By heavily constricting his vocal folds and pushing an immense volume of air from his diaphragm, Johnson created a high-pressure, high-frequency resonance. It functioned almost exactly like a brass horn, slicing cleanly through Mutt Lange's incredibly dense wall of guitars and drums.
Wow. What stands out to me here is how rare it is for a band to replace an iconic frontman and actually get bigger. The lyrical theme shifted perfectly to match Brian's new vocal engine, too. They moved away from Bon's gritty autobiographical pub stories and leaned into these massive, myth-making stadium chants.
You shook me all night long.
Yes, or Shoot to Thrill. They became universally resonant rock and roll anthems designed for tens of thousands of people.
Which naturally leads us to look at how this stadium-filling sound clashed with the way the culture at large perceived them. To really understand that disconnect, you have to understand the crucible AC/DC was forged in, which was the Australian pub rock circuit of the 1970s.
Oh, the notorious beer barns.
Yes! Massive, violent suburban venues where patrons engaged in heavy drinking. In that environment, if a band showed any hint of art school pretentiousness, or if they couldn't project enough energy to command the room, the crowd would literally throw physical objects at the stage.
That is terrifying.
You had to perform with absolute physical commitment and punishing volume just to survive the night. That environment permanently stripped away all unnecessary, delicate elements from their musical presentation.
But as they grew globally in the 1980s, that raw survivalist energy got completely misinterpreted by American culture. Suddenly, AC/DC is caught dead center in the crosshairs of the Satanic Panic.
Yeah, it was a severe disconnect between their internal reality and their public reputation.
How did that happen?
Well, the moral panic reached a fever pitch when the serial killer Richard Ramirez, who was known as the Night Stalker, left an AC/DC hat at a crime scene.
Oh, wow.
And certain media outlets falsely claimed the band's name was an acronym for Antichrist Devil's Child.
Which isn't true at all.
No, not at all.
Wow.
In reality, their sister Margaret saw the AC/DC label on a sewing machine adapter and thought it sounded like a good description for their energetic music.
That is so innocent. But the track Night Prowler from Highway to Hell was heavily scrutinized. Conservative groups and the Parents Music Resource Center raised alarms about the song, interpreting it as an instruction manual for violence. This led to widespread protests, record burnings, and concert cancellations across the United States.
Right. And looking at the historical events objectively, the PMRC and conservative movements actively campaigned against the band's influence based on these interpretations. Meanwhile, the band maintained the song was simply a voyeuristic teenager story written by Bon Scott, inspired by his own youth sneaking into bedrooms. This clash creates an incredible paradox regarding their cultural imprint.
That is the deepest irony of all. The media viewed them as these dangerous antisocial rebels threatening the fabric of society. But internally, they were arguably the most conservative, hardworking, punch-the-clock traditionalists in the entire music industry.
They were profoundly traditionalist. They viewed their music not as high art, but as a blue-collar skilled trade. For 50 years, they completely refused to use synthesizers.
They ignored the hair metal, power ballad trends of the 80s.
They ignored the grunge movement of the 90s. Just 5 guys, t-shirts and jeans, plus the schoolboy uniform, playing traditional electric blues rock through Marshall amplifiers. It is a radical form of cultural conservatism that paradoxically served as their ultimate rebellion against the rapidly shifting music industry.
They just kept punching the clock, delivering the exact utility you paid for. And their resilience in keeping that machine running is honestly staggering. As we look at their late-stage career, they have survived things that would shatter any other group permanently.
Oh, absolutely. The loss of Malcolm Young was a monumental blow. He was the primary architect and business leader of the group. When he had retired due to dementia in 2014, eventually passing away in 2017, they brought in his nephew, Stevie Young.
And Stevie had studied him for years, right?
Decades, actually. He studied Malcolm's exact heavy-handed string tension style, allowing the rhythm engine to continue seamlessly without dropping a beat.
And then in 2016, Brian Johnson suffers severe hearing loss. He is told by doctors he has to immediately get off the tour or risk permanent deafness. They actually finished the tour with Axl Rose on vocals.
Which was a wild pivot.
A completely wild pivot. But then, through the use of highly advanced in-ear monitoring technology designed specifically to bypass his damaged eardrums, Brian Johnson makes a triumphant return. They record the album Power Up, and it debuts at #1 in 18 countries, making them the only Australian group in history to hit #1 across 5 consecutive decades.
It just cements their legacy as the ultimate, uncorrupted purists of rock and roll. Through death, changing eras, and massive technological shifts, they preserve their specific art form perfectly.
So to circle back to where we started with that utility company metaphor, AC/DC proved that relentless repetition isn't a lack of creativity. It is the obsessive refinement of a powerful tool. But it leaves you with a lingering question.
What's that?
If AC/DC is effectively the perfect, unchanging machine, what happens when the final gear finally stops turning? Can this type of legacy, a 50-year commitment to a single, unwavering sonic formula, ever be replicated in today's hyper-fragmented, trend-chasing music industry?
It's a fascinating thought to take with you, especially as the industry moves further away from that kind of patience.
Join the conversation, leave a review, and let us know what you thought of today's show.